My husband told me I was too old for him after 30 years of marriage, so I showed him who really owned everything. I sat frozen under the restaurant lights, my birthday cake between us and candles soft and warm. He smiled like he always did when he planned something small and cruel. Then he said, "You're aging gracefully, but I need something fresh." The words felt like ice. He slid a thin stack of papers across the table. Divorce papers. Fork clattered. All the diners turned slowly toward us. I heard the chair scrape and the heartbeat in my ears. He looked at me like I was a stranger. For 30 years I had loved him, baked his favorite pie, held his hand when he worried about work. The man who once called me beautiful now called me old in front of the room. I tried to laugh, and it came out like a cough. He folded his hands and said the legal words as if this was a speech. I pulled out my phone, and the screen flashed like a foreign language. I remember saying nothing. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I left the restaurant in a fog and went home before I could think straight. I turned on my laptop to find pictures I did not want to see. There he was in a gym, arms bare, and laughing with a woman who looked half his age. She smiled like a TV face and wore tight clothes that said new life. The post read, "New chapter." I felt my cheeks burn, and my hands went cold. The humiliation was bright and loud, and I knew it was meant to hurt. Friends I thought were steady liked and sent hearts. People I had known for years commented with party emojis and clapping hands. I had walked with him into rooms where people dropped their hats because of his name. Now his name was a blade. I opened old albums and watched us younger, hopeful, silly. That life felt like someone else's play. I stayed awake that night and read the comments where they cheered him on, like they were seeing a good show. He started deleting me from his world like I was an app. One morning I woke to find my photos gone from his social feed. He changed his bio to CEO living my best life, and the photos of us at the lake were gone. Friends messaged him for access to parties and said things like, "You deserve to enjoy this." It felt like I had been erased from a story I helped write. I sat alone in the house we had built and looked at the empty frames. He had the grin of someone who had already started a new chapter and expected applause. I called his office and got a polite woman who gave me the easy answers. No one spoke the truth. I cooked dinner and set 2 plates out because old habits die slow. I placed my fork beside his napkin and stared at the doorway where he used to come home and say, "I'm here." The house answered only with its own quiet. 30 years ago, I had given him my small inheritance, so he could start a luxury design company. I signed papers with a hand that trembled, but a faith that burned bright. He was handsome then, and the town loved his ideas. He spoke to clients with confidence while I sat at the kitchen table and handled contracts, budgets, and the nights when the invoices did not come. I wrote the proposals, balanced accounts, and met suppliers when he could not. He was the face. I was the backbone. I remember nights of cheap coffee and long phone calls, planning showrooms and catalogs. We celebrated when the first big order came, and I cried when we cut the ribbon on our first studio. I followed him to trade shows and handled the mess when clients complained. Those years built our house, our staff, and the trust of townspeople. I thought we were building a life together. I did not know I was building a business he would later pretend he alone had made. He called me from his office and said the bank had frozen our joint accounts pending separation. I went to the grocery store, and my card was declined in the cereal aisle. I stood with boxes of cornflakes and felt the heat of people looking. He thought I was powerless. He did not know I had seen the papers listing our company ownership. He had the show, new photos, new girlfriend, new catchphrases. He forgot that I had kept every contract and every invoice. I walked home with a small bag and felt small in my own shoes. At night I sat at the dining table and counted receipts, not money. The house echoed with the sound of his lighter from the image of him in a new life. I felt anger, but also a strange clarity. If he wanted to erase me, maybe he had started something he could not finish. I began to make a quiet plan. I did not tell anyone.
Yet.
I searched old boxes in the attic, dust falling like tiny snow. I was looking for old birthday cards to remind myself I had once been loved. Instead, I found a file marked 1993, start. Inside were the original company papers. My breath caught when I read the lines. My name stood as majority shareholder, 70%. He was listed only as managing partner. He had forgotten to update the papers when he rebranded the business years later. 30 years of work and money, and he thought he had erased my place in it with a new logo. I sat on the attic floor and felt something new inside me, something warm and sharp. Power. Real power. He didn't know. He thought he had already won, that I was just an old wife he could toss away. I ran my thumb along the old signature, my signature, and whispered, "You should have remembered who built this with you." For the first time since the betrayal, I smiled. The next morning, I took the papers to a lawyer named Mr. Hart. He was calm, with gray hair and wide glasses. When he read the ownership lines, he actually laughed so hard he had to clear his throat twice. "Ma'am, you technically own 70% of everything he brags about," he said. "Every studio, every showroom, every shiny car he poses with online." I sat still, letting the words sink in. I had gone from the forgotten wife to the actual owner of the entire empire. Hope rose inside me like a sunrise. I asked what came next. He leaned forward. "We move quiet. Do not warn him. Do not react to anything he posts. Let him believe you are weak." He tapped the old papers. "This is your shield, and later it will be your sword." I held the documents close to my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. Maybe I wasn't the one losing everything. Maybe he was. He held a huge launch party that night for his new design line. Everyone dressed in gold and silver, as if they were celebrating a king. I walked in alone and quiet. The music thumped under my feet. He saw me from the stage, and his lips curled into a smirk. When he spoke into the microphone, he said, "Sometimes we need to evolve. Life doesn't wait for anyone stuck in the past." People turned to look at me like I was the past he meant. Inside, my heart beat like a slow drum, but outside, I kept my face calm. A camera from a local show zoomed in on me. I smiled, soft and steady. They didn't know the storm inside me had changed direction. They didn't know what I held in my purse, the papers that proved who owned everything around them. He thought he was showing the world his strength. But all I saw was a man dancing on a bridge about to break. When I got home from the party, I hired a forensic accountant named Clara. She was small and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could spot a lie across a parking lot. I handed her 30 years of records, emails, and bank statements. She worked for hours at my dining table, typing fast. Then she showed me a chart filled with red marks. "He moved money into shell companies," she said. "Millions. And look here. Company funds transferred to a private studio under someone else's name." It was the fitness studio where the young woman worked. My hands tightened. He wasn't just cruel, he was stealing from the business. From me. Clara looked up. "Everything he did is traceable. You have legal grounds for control." My anger settled into something colder and clearer. He thought I was too old to understand numbers. He forgot I spent years doing every contract. Now every lie he hid was a map, leading straight toward his downfall. A few days later, the young woman, his new trainer, posted a video. She smiled at her phone and said, "Hard work pays off, especially when you date the right investor." She winked and showed a shiny new studio full of equipment. People commented with fire emojis and claps. The video went viral in an hour. I watched it twice, then a third time. She thought she had earned something. She didn't know she was bragging about illegal spending. The seeds of his downfall were planted right there in her glossy hair and bright grin. I saved the video to a folder named Truth. Online, everyone cheered her confidence. They called her lucky and brave. No one knew the real story yet, but they would. Soon. I closed my laptop and breathed slowly. Each mistake he made was no longer a wound to me. It was evidence, and evidence was power. And I finally remembered I had always been powerful. He just didn't want me to know. I accidentally met the young woman at an upscale spa 2 days later. She walked in wearing bright colors and expensive perfume, acting like she owned the place. I pretended not to know her. "Your hair is lovely," I said, letting my voice sound warm. She softened fast, the way people do when they feel admired. Soon she told me all about her plans. "He wants us to open more studios," she said. "He said I might even co-own the next one." She smiled at herself in the mirror, not knowing the trap she'd set. "That's exciting," I said. "Investments can change everything." She nodded eagerly and kept talking. She thought I was a harmless older woman trying to feel fancy. She didn't know she had just revealed the exact lie he was hiding from his board. When she left, she waved at me like we were friends. I watched her walk away, thinking, "You are perfect bait, and you don't even know it yet." Later that night, I opened my old laptop, the one he told me to throw away years ago. When I logged in, it synced with the company's servers like it always did. And there I found the emails, dozens. Emails where he wrote to his partners about me. He called me expired PR collateral, dead weight, and company clutter. I sat in the dark reading each line. They weren't even careful. He had sent messages at midnight, bragging about how he would move the old wife out and upgrade the brand image. I thought my chest would crack. After 30 years of building his dream with my time and my money, I had become nothing but a stain he wanted gone. I saved every email. The audience in my mind already seethed. I whispered, "You should have thought before typing." Those messages were more than insults. They were proof he had planned my erasure long before my birthday betrayal. The stress built up like a weight on my chest. One morning, I woke up shaking, unable to catch my breath. I drove myself to the ER with my hand pressed against my heart. The nurses moved fast. The doctor came in with calm eyes and said, "You're having severe palpitations. Stress can do this. If you don't remove whatever is harming you, your body will pay the price." I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. I realized I had spent years shrinking so he could shine. Years swallowing anger to keep peace. Years believing that love meant giving more than I received. When the doctor left, I sat up slowly. Revenge wasn't anger anymore. It was self-care. It was survival. I walked out of the hospital steadier than I had been in weeks. If he wanted to treat me like something old to replace, he was about to learn the danger of underestimating a woman who finally stood up. A week later, I learned he was trying to buy me out quietly. A small firm sent me an offer, just pennies for my shares. I recognized the trick immediately. He thought I would panic and sign anything. He didn't know I had already spoken to lawyers, already seen every hidden account he tried to tuck away. I read the offer twice, then folded the letter and placed it under a paperweight. I signed nothing. Not one line. I knew his board did not know the truth. They thought he owned the company. They thought he handled finances alone. Meanwhile, his entire empire rested on my signature from 30 years ago. I felt calmer each day, watching his lies twist around him like vines. He kept posting happy pictures, pretending life was perfect. He did not know the ground beneath him was shifting.
And I didn't warn him. Not yet.
Silence was my sharpest weapon, and he walked right into it. I arranged a private meeting with our company's silent investor, Mr. Lin, a man who rarely spoke but always saw everything. When he arrived, he carried the calm of someone who had watched empires rise and fall. I handed him the incorporation papers. He read them slowly. When he looked up, his eyes held surprise, but also respect. "You still hold majority control," he said. I nodded. "He forgot," I replied. He believed he had already pushed me out. Mr. Lin closed the folder with care. "If this is true, then I stand with you. The company needs stability, not vanity." His words steadied me. For years I felt alone in that business, while my husband soaked in applause. Now someone powerful saw the truth. "Move carefully," he warned. "Men like him do not give up control quietly." I thanked him and walked out of the meeting taller than before. I finally had an ally, and soon, the rest of the world would learn who the real owner was. Our 30-year wedding anniversary came, though we were no longer speaking. Magazines posted photos of him and the young woman, calling her his new partner. Reporters wrote lies about me being bitter and hard to live with. I sat at my kitchen table, reading every headline. My hands shook, but not from sadness, from focus. I wrote an invitation and mailed it to his office. It said, "Final celebration. One last dinner. No lawyers. No shouting. Just truth." I knew he wouldn't be able to resist. He loved anything that made him feel powerful. He thought he had won. He thought I was crawling back for closure. He didn't know this dinner would become the doorway to his own undoing. I dressed in a simple black dress and stood in the mirror. I looked older, yes, but also stronger. Stronger than I ever knew. When I sealed the envelope, I whispered, "Let the final act begin." And I felt something steady inside me, something like fire. We met at a lavish hotel restaurant, full of gold lights and tall flowers. He arrived with his usual smug smile, like he expected me to beg. "You look decent," he said, as if decent was a gift. I let his insult slide. Tonight was not about anger. Tonight was strategy. Over dinner, I pretended to agree to sell my shares. His eyes lit up fast. He leaned closer and whispered, "Perfect. I forged the old signature already. No one checks those things." My heart thudded, but I kept my face calm. The hidden cameras Clara set up captured every word. He kept talking, his favorite hobby, and bragged about lying to the board and hiding money. At the end, he raised his glass and said, "To victory." I lifted mine and smiled. He didn't know he had just admitted to crimes on video. When he walked me to the door, he thought he had won. But I knew the truth. His victory toast was his own downfall. The next morning, my lawyer filed quiet motions to freeze several assets. Not the big ones, only the ones connected to his shell companies. Just enough to confuse him. I didn't want him to panic yet. I wanted him curious. While he bragged online about success, judges were signing orders behind closed doors. No one else noticed. Not his board. Not his girlfriend. Not even his accountant. Everything moved like slow water. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. I sat at home drinking tea while the legal knots tightened. He posted pictures of himself in expensive suits, laughing at some rooftop event. His caption read, "Winning never gets old." I almost laughed at the word old. If only he knew. When my phone buzzed with confirmation that the freezes were approved, I placed it down gently. This wasn't revenge yet. This was only preparation. The real storm was still waiting, and he had no idea the sky above him had already turned dark. A week later, a reporter asked to interview me for a story about women in business. I agreed, but not to talk about my marriage. I spoke instead about aging women who still had power, dreams, and sharp minds. "We don't expire," I said. "We evolve." I mentioned, lightly, that my company supported women over 50 starting new careers. The reporter smiled, touched by the message. She didn't know the deeper truth, that I was preparing the public to see me again, not as a forgotten wife, but as a leader. When the interview aired, the comments shocked me. People cheered. Women wrote paragraphs about feeling seen. Even young viewers shared it with pride. The sympathy shifted without me ever naming him. I simply told the truth about strength. After it aired, I sat on my couch and breathed deeply. If he saw the interview, he would think it was harmless. But the world now had its eyes open. And soon they would see everything. The young woman posted less after that week. One afternoon, she went live accidentally, her phone still streaming as she walked into his office. I heard his voice through the screen. "She's temporary," he said. "Good for marketing. Nothing more." The woman paused, shocked. She whispered, "Temporary?" But he didn't see her. He kept talking on the phone, saying she was useful until the next upgrade. My heart clenched for her. Even she didn't deserve that. The live video had already reached thousands before she deleted it. Comments exploded. People began to question him. Some defended her. Others mocked him. That was the moment she realized she wasn't special to him. She was a tool. I watched the clip again and again. This wasn't part of my plan, but it helped. His lies were breaking from inside his own walls. And the girl he had chosen over me was starting to see the truth. The perfect storm was building, and he had built half of it himself. A month after the birthday disaster, an old video surfaced online. Someone at the restaurant had filmed him laughing as he joked about my wrinkles and being past my prime. They caught the moment he slid the divorce papers toward me.
They caught my face breaking.
The clip spread everywhere. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. People commented things like, "How could he say that?" and "She didn't deserve this." Suddenly the world saw the moment my marriage cracked. I watched myself on screen, small, hurt, silent. But then I saw something else too. I saw the moment his mask slipped. I downloaded the video into my folder named Truth. The world was beginning to turn against him. Sponsors he loved started pulling back. His brand deals slowed. His new chapter didn't look shiny anymore. That night, I stood on my porch, watching cars pass, and whispered, "This is the first spark." And I felt strength move through me like wind. Clara called me early the next morning. "You need to see something," she said. She drove me to a tall glass building downtown. Inside was a penthouse. A secret penthouse, bought with company funds. He had decorated it for his new life. Gold lamps, velvet seats, a bar full of fancy drinks. But the folder Clara handed me made my knees warm. Because the title on the property listed my name, not his. Old corporate policy. All major purchases needed the majority shareholder's name.
Mine.
Not his. I walked through the rooms in silence, touching the walls, the counters, the smooth floor. This was his hidden kingdom.
And it belonged to me.
I imagined him bragging about it, showing the young woman the view.
I almost laughed.
He thought he had hidden treasure, but he had signed it into my hands without thinking. I whispered, "Thank you for the gift." This wasn't just evidence. This was power, wrapped in marble and glass. 2 days later, I walked back into the headquarters I hadn't stepped inside for years. My heels clicked on the tile, and every head turned. Some whispered my name. Others straightened in surprise. I carried the incorporation papers tucked in my bag. When I reached the front desk, the young receptionist blinked at me. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "I'm the owner," I replied calmly. "Every hour is my appointment." She stared, then slowly stood. Employees gathered in the hall, watching. I walked through the lobby, past the awards I helped him win, past the photos he had taken without me. They looked like decorations from a story I no longer belonged to. When I entered the boardroom, several members rose to greet me. One whispered, "We didn't know you were still involved." I smiled. That's because he wanted me gone. I placed the papers on the table. "Morning, everyone. The owner's back." A ripple of shock moved through the room. He stormed into the boardroom less than 10 minutes later, face red, jaw tight. "What is SHE doing here?" he snapped at security. "Remove her." The guards didn't move. My lawyer stepped forward calmly and placed the ownership documents on the table between us. He read the lines, and the color drained from his face. He looked at me like I had turned into someone he didn't recognize. This must be old," he muttered. "We updated this years ago." "You meant to," my lawyer said, "but you never filed it." The room was silent. He swallowed hard. "You can't fire me." I leaned back in my chair, letting my voice stay soft and sharp. "Darling, I'm too old to be fired." His mouth dropped open. The board members watched everything, stunned. His power, so loud, so bright, flickered like a weak bulb. He finally realized the truth. He wasn't standing above me. He was standing on ground I owned. Please like, share, and hit the subscribe button for more. I called an emergency board meeting that same afternoon. Every member sat stiff and silent as I took the head seat, the seat he always kept for himself. He paced behind me like a trapped animal. I opened the meeting with a steady voice. "As majority shareholder, I call for a vote to remove him as CEO." Gasps filled the room. He laughed a shaky laugh. "They won't listen to you," he said. "They know who built this company." I looked around. The board members avoided his eyes. They had seen the videos. They had seen the articles. They had seen him crumble. One by one, hands lifted. Yes. 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 A full, clean sweep. He stood frozen, as if the world had tilted. I closed the meeting with a small nod. You're relieved of duty, I said. For the first time in years, I breathed without weight. He staggered back, stunned. His kingdom had slipped away, in one vote in one moment by my hand. The next morning, he woke to find every card, every account, every credit line frozen. He called me 10 times before noon, shouting into my voicemail like a child denied candy. I didn't answer. The company had paid for most of his life, his luxury car, the penthouse, the gym memberships, even the watches he liked to flash online. All of it was under company control. My control. When he tried to drive to the office, his car wouldn't unlock. The lease had been tied to his CEO status. Without the title, he had no access. He kicked the tire until a security guard approached. People filmed him on their phones. I watched the videos later and felt no guilt. For years he made me feel small while he grew bigger and louder. Now he finally understood what it felt like to lose everything you leaned on. He told the guards, "Call my wife." They answered, "Sir, she owns the company." I almost laughed. Later that afternoon, the young woman received an eviction notice at the penthouse, signed by me. She posted a shaky video online saying, "I don't understand. He said it was ours." Her voice cracked. People began to piece the truth together. The comments were wild. Some blamed her, but most blamed him. She called me, crying softly. "I didn't know he used company money," she said. And for the first time, I believed her. She had been fooled like I once was. I spoke gently. "It's not your fault. But you can't stay there." She sniffed and whispered, "What do I do now?" I didn't answer right away. She was not my enemy. She was a mirror, showing the younger me, who trusted a man too much. She packed her bags and left quietly. The penthouse became mine again. Everything he tried to hide became another piece of truth on my side. And the audience watching online? They were cheering me on. A week later, I released an open letter. It said, "Women don't expire. Some just upgrade their strategy." Nothing more. No names. No drama. But people understood. The post spread everywhere, business pages, podcasts, magazines. Women shared it saying they finally felt seen. Men commented about their mothers, sisters, and wives who deserved respect. The world's attention shifted. Reporters tried to contact him. He refused all interviews. His silence screamed guilt. My letter wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming my voice. The public began to stand with me, not because I asked them to, but because they had watched him mock and dismiss me in videos he once thought were harmless. I walked into a cafe, and people smiled at me like I was someone important. Maybe I was. Maybe I always had been.
For years he used my silence to control the story.
Now my voice was louder than his entire brand. And that was only the beginning. I decided to fund something meaningful, scholarships for women over 40 starting new businesses. To raise the money, I sold his prized classic car collection. The one he polished every Sunday. The one he said I was too old to ride in. Reporters showed up to the auction, surprised to see me smiling beside the shining cars. People bid high, almost joyfully, like they were part of the payback. Every dollar went into the scholarship fund. When the story reached the news, the headline read, "Wife turns husband's luxuries into new futures." The comments were beautiful. Women cheering, men clapping, teens writing how proud they felt. He, meanwhile, lost another sponsorship the same day. His brand was rotting from the inside. I stood in the empty garage afterward, touching the dusty floor. These cars once symbolized his power. Now, they symbolized my rise. Sometimes revenge wasn't loud. Sometimes it was simply doing good with what was meant to destroy you. He tried to start a new company. He even posted a bold video saying, "A real man always rebuilds." But investors saw the interviews I did. They saw the court motions. They saw the public turn. Every one of them backed out. His new business fell apart before it even began. He blamed me on live TV, said I ruined his name. I watched the clip while eating soup. Instead of defending myself, I posted a short message. Thank you for the free marketing. People laughed so hard the clip went viral. His outburst made him look weak, while I looked calm and wise. That day, for the first time, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace.
True peace.
Revenge wasn't the point anymore. This was justice. He had once told me I was too old to run with him. Now he couldn't take one step without tripping over my shadow. I hosted a charity gala for women in leadership. The hall shimmered with soft lights, and the stage was covered in flowers. It felt strange standing there alone, but strong. The scholarship fund had already helped dozens of women, and the room was full of people cheering for change. Halfway through the night, I noticed someone hiding near the back, the young woman. She wore a simple dress and looked nervous, nothing like her old flashy self. Later she approached me with shaking hands. "I need a job," she whispered. "I want to start over." I studied her face. She no longer looked proud or smug. She looked human. I nodded slowly. "You can start as an intern," I said. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you." She wasn't my enemy. She had been used just like I had been used. Helping her wasn't weakness, it was strength. Revenge didn't need to crush everyone. Sometimes it lifted the right people up instead. Not long after, he tried to sue me for defamation. He stood in court and claimed I ruined his life with lies. My lawyer didn't argue loudly. He simply pulled out the video from the dinner, the one where my husband bragged about forging signatures. The room fell into silence as his own voice echoed through the speakers. His face turned pale. He tried to interrupt, but the judge held up a hand. When the video ended, the judge spoke plainly. Case dismissed. The defendant owes all legal fees. People in the gallery actually gasped. My husband looked at me with a mix of fear and shock, like he had finally met the real me for the first time. I walked out of the courtroom calm, feeling the weight of years lift off my shoulders. Justice wasn't loud. It was simple. Truth spoke for itself, and it spoke clearly that day. He had dug his own grave with his own words. His world fell apart faster than I expected. One by one, banks closed his credit lines. The fancy gym canceled his membership. The hotel where he once held meetings refused him service. The company he bragged about was gone. The investors gone, the cars gone. Even the young friends he used to impress disappeared. He moved into a tiny apartment with peeling paint and posted long rants online about betrayal. People stopped listening. They were tired of his drama. Bankruptcy papers soon followed. All those years he told me I needed him, they were lies.
He had needed me.
I had been the foundation he stood on, and once it broke, he had nothing left. I watched the news quietly, feeling a strange calmness. I didn't feel joy at his fall. I felt closure. The truth had undone him. He had undone himself. And the world finally saw the man behind the mask. A magazine invited me for a cover story. I almost said no, but Mr. Lin insisted it would inspire other women. The photo shoot felt surreal, bright lights, warm smiles, soft music. When the issue came out, the headline read, "Ageless Power." Below it was my quote. He said I was too old to run with him. Turns out, I was running the race. The story spread worldwide. Women wrote to me from different countries saying they felt stronger because of what I had done. News outlets praised the scholarship fund, the board takeover, and my calm, steady strength. I realized something important. My story wasn't just revenge. It was a message that age wasn't a limit. Betrayal wasn't an ending. And silence wasn't weakness. When I saw the magazine on store shelves, I stood still for a moment. This was the woman he tried to erase. But here she was on the cover. He showed up at my office one rainy afternoon, hair messy, clothes wrinkled. He looked small, almost fragile. "Please," he said softly.
I'm sorry.
I lost everything. I didn't think it would go this far. I let him inside. He sat across from me like a child waiting for punishment. "Can we fix this?" he asked. I studied him. The man I had once loved. The man who had thrown me away for fantasy. He waited for forgiveness like it was something he deserved. I stood and walked to the coffee machine. Would you like some? I asked gently. His eyes filled with hope. When I returned, I placed a small envelope beside his cup. Your severance, I said. He opened it. Inside was a single dollar. He stared at it, stunned. Why? He whispered. I met his eyes. Because that is exactly what you thought I was worth. He had no answer. The young woman, now my intern, approached me one morning with careful steps. I want to thank you, she said, holding a stack of folders. You didn't have to help me after everything. I looked at her closely. She had softened. No more flashy clothes, no more bragging. She worked hard, stayed late, and asked real questions about business and life. One day she told her story publicly, how she had been fooled, used, and lied to. She didn't blame me. She blamed the choices she made while chasing something shiny. People online called her brave. I saw tears in her eyes when she read the comments. She said, "You saved me." I shook my head. You saved yourself. I only opened a door. Her growth warmed something in me. Revenge could destroy, yes. But sometimes revenge also cleared space for someone else to rebuild. And watching her become a better person felt like its own quiet victory. At the company's anniversary event, I stood on stage facing a room full of young executives. They waited for my speech, phones ready. I took a breath and spoke from the place inside me that had once been broken. Don't let anyone convince you your prime is past, I said. Power doesn't age. It grows. The room fell silent, hanging on each word. I told them about fear, betrayal, and finding strength again. I didn't say his name, but everyone knew. When I finished, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Some of them had seen my fall in real time. Now, they were watching my rise. As the applause washed over me, I felt something like healing. Not because I had beaten him, but because I had built something new, something truly mine. I walked off the stage not as someone's wife or someone's past, but as a leader. And maybe for the first time I believed it. A week later, paparazzi photos spread online. He was standing outside a cheap motel, holding a magazine, the one with my face on the cover. His shoulders slumped. Rain soaked his clothes. The picture was almost painful to look at. This was the man who once bragged about 5-star hotels and private lounges. The man who said I was too old for him. Now he looked older than I ever had. Some people mocked him. Some pitied him. I felt neither. Choices had brought him here. Choices he made with full confidence, thinking he would never fall. The world had moved on from him. And I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned away, leaving only truth. He had built his life on lies, and lies crumble. My life had been rebuilt on truth, and truth stands. I closed the article and set my phone aside. His chapter was over. Mine wasn't. I visited him quietly a few days later. He sat alone at a metal table in the motel lobby, staring at the floor. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes softened with something like shame. "Why are you here?" he whispered. I sat across from him. "To return your words," I said. He blinked, confused. I leaned forward. "You're aging gracefully, but I need something fresh." His breath caught. The same words he had once used to crush me now landed on him like stones. But I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply stood. "Goodbye," I said. He reached out as if to stop me, but his hand fell halfway. There was nothing left between us but memory. As I walked out into the sunlight, I felt lighter. That sentence had marked the beginning of my pain. Now it marked the end of it. I finally closed the door he had opened. At sunset, inside my quiet office, I signed the papers renaming the company. The old name, the one tied to him, was gone. The new sign read, Eterna Industries. Eternal.
Strong. Mine.
Reporters gathered outside, eager for a quote. I stepped out and spoke clearly. He said I was too old for him. Turns out he was too small for me. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. People clapped like they were witnessing history. In a way, they were. I wasn't just reclaiming a company. I was reclaiming my entire life. I looked up at the glowing sign, feeling 30 years of weight fall from my shoulders. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was rebirth. I walked back inside, ready for everything ahead. My story had changed shape. My power had returned. And the world finally knew who I was. The ending wasn't bitter. It was bright, like a new sunrise after a long storm. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more great true stories.